My name is Ashley, and I live a peaceful life with my husband, Dan. We get along well, but there's one thing that bothers my brother's wife, Rachel. My brother and Rachel have a 3-year-old daughter named Aydah. She's an adorable little girl, and John and I love her. It's fun to spend time with Aydah sometimes, but Rachel brings her to our house almost every week. Ashley, can you take care of Aydah this week again? Please, Rachel says as she drops her off. Be a good girl, Aydah, she adds. Aydah happily walks into our living room as if it's her own home. Dan, who's relaxing in the living room, looks after her while I gather the courage to talk to Rachel. Rachel, we really love Aydah. I start hesitantly, but taking care of her every week is a bit much for us. Even though we work from home, we're both freelancers. I'm an illustrator, and John's a programmer. Our schedules are flexible, but when we're busy, we can't focus on both work and watching a child. We're worried about something happening to her while she's here. I feel guilty for saying this because I don't want to cause problems between Rachel and my brother, but I've reached my limit. I'm sorry, but could today be the last time we look after Aydah? I ask politely. Rachel's expression changes immediately. Her face hardens, and she raises her eyebrows. You just don't understand, Ashley. You don't have children, so you have no idea how hard it is to raise one. Stop complaining when you don't know what it's like, she snaps. Her words cut me deeply. John and I love kids, and when we got married, we dreamed of starting a family. But even after trying for a long time, we couldn't conceive. After seeing a doctor, I was told I have a condition that makes getting pregnant very difficult. We're now undergoing fertility treatments, which are exhausting and expensive. Every month, we hope it will work, but the emotional stress is overwhelming for both of us. Hearing Rachel criticize me for not having kids is like a stab to the heart, and she doesn't stop there. Unlike you two, who just sit at home all day, she adds, making me feel even worse. I've always been a sociable person with many friends who count on me. Today, Rachel dropped Aydah off again, saying, I'm going to London to help a friend. You two, who are shut-eye and don't contribute to society, should be grateful that I'm doing my part. So, take care of Aydah properly and stop complaining. With that, she strutted out of the house, dressed up in stylish clothes and leaving behind a strong scent of perfume. I went back to the living room, feeling upset. Dan, who had overheard everything, was visibly angry. I didn't want to argue in front of Aydah, which is why I stayed quiet, but that was way out of line, he said. It had been about a month since Rachel started leaving Aydah with us every week, and I decided it was time to talk to my brother, Chris. I picked up the phone and called him. Hello, Chris. Oh, hey, Ashley. Long time no talk. How are you? He replied cheerfully. His casual tone annoyed me, after all we'd been dealing with. Listen, Chris, Aydah is a sweet kid, but it's exhausting having her here every week. John and I have deadlines to meet. We're freelancers, not babysitters. Could you give us some consideration? Chris paused, confused. Aydah, she's sleeping right now at home. What? I frowned. He sent me a photo of Aydah asleep on their couch. I stared at it in disbelief. This wasn't the same child Rachel had been bringing to our house. I quickly sent him a picture of the girl currently playing with John. Chris replied, Who is that? The last time I saw Aydah, she was still a baby and couldn't even walk. Realizing something was very wrong, Chris and I were both puzzled. Why had Rachel been bringing this other child to our home? Dan, who had been quietly listening to our conversation, finally spoke up hesitantly. Chris, I don't mean to be rude, but has Rachel been acting strange lately? Rachel had been different lately. After her parents passed away a few years ago, she stopped coming to family gatherings. Back then, she was more modest, but recently, she started wearing flashy clothes in bright colors and bold accessories. Chris eyed heavily on the other end of the line. Yeah, you're not wrong. I've noticed some changes too. I think I might know what's going on. Let me call you back. With that, he hung up, leaving us even more confused. John and I felt sorry for Chris. But we couldn't shake the suspicion that Rachel might be cheating on him. Still, that wasn't something we could deal with. It was up to Chris to handle. What we could do was try to figure out who the cheerful little girl playing in front of us really was. Aydah, you're 3 years old, right? Can you tell us your name? I asked gently. Until now, we had always assumed she was our niece, so we never thought to confirm it. But if she was an Aydah, we needed to know her real name. My heart was racing as I waited for her answer. With a bright smile, the little girl replied, I'm Aydah Johnson. I'm 3 years old. John and I exchanged a glance, our minds spinning. After a brief pause, we put on warm smiles and praised her enthusiastically. Wow, you said that so well, Aydah, we said, acting as if everything was normal. Even though we kept our cool on the outside, questions swirled in our minds. Who was this child really, and what was Rachel up to? To make sure little Aydah didn't notice anything was wrong, I hid my uneasiness. The name Johnson sounded unfamiliar to me, and it was clear this child wasn't my niece, but I knew it wasn't her fault, and she didn't deserve to be caught in this mess. Hoping to help my brother figure things out, I messaged him on WhatsApp, letting him know the girl here said her name was Aydah Johnson. His reply was short, got it, thanks. That afternoon, my brother showed up at our house with someone else. Sorry for the trouble, but I need to talk to Rachel when she comes to pick up Aydah. Can we wait here? He asked. I agreed immediately. I couldn't forgive Rachel for betraying my brother, and I wanted to see how this would unfold. As the evening passed and night fell, Rachel finally arrived. She stumbled in, clearly drunk. I'm Mom, Peter. I came to pick you up, she called out cheerfully, pretending everything was fine. I greeted her with a forced smile. Welcome back, Rachel. You look like you've had a lot to drink. How about some water? She smirked. That would be nice. Is this your way of apologizing for the nonsense you said this morning? Rachel entered the living room, where Aydah was happily sitting on another woman's lap. The cheerful expression drained from Rachel's face as she noticed a woman glaring at her. Who's that? Did you hire a babysitter? Rachel asked, confused. The woman spoke calmly but firmly. Nice to meet you. I'm Katie Johnson, Aydah's mother. What? Rachel was so shocked she staggered backward, tripping and falling to the floor as I looked down at her, offering no help. My brother's voice came from the doorway. I've brought him. Rachel, still on the floor, gasped. Chris, why are you here? Chris stepped inside, dragging along a man with brightly dyed hair. Rachel went pale at the sight of him, and the man frowned when he saw Katie. Chris told Rachel and the man to sit on the couch. Although they weren't forced, they both obeyed, sitting stiffly, their eyes darting around nervously. John, realizing this was no place for a child, took Aydah to another room to play. Once everyone was seated, Chris stood in front of Rachel and the man, his voice cold and controlled. I never imagined my close friend would cheat with my wife, isn't that right, Noah? The man, Noah, turned out to be someone Chris had known since high school. He was a former classmate who still visited Chris occasionally, though Chris had always felt uneasy about the way Noah looked at Rachel. I thought if Rachel was going to cheat, it might be with you, Chris continued, but I can't believe it's real. And on top of that, you've been leaving your own child with my sister and her husband. What kind of sick joke is that? Chris, who had been a troublemaker in his younger days, let some of his old intensity show. Noah cowered under the weight of Chris' words, stammering as he replied. It wasn't me. Rachel seduced me. She came to my salon and asked for me specifically. You're blaming everything on me. You were into it too, Noah. Rachel shot back, clearly trying to deflect responsibility. Chris cut them both off, his voice sharp. Who cares who started it? What you two need to do first is apologize. Rachel and Noah muttered apologies, but it was clear their words were hollow before they could say much more. Noah pointed at Katie, who was now crying. His voice rose, blaming her. This is all her fault. She never pays attention to me. I was lonely, so I cheated. If anyone's to blame, it's Katie. Katie, who had remained calm and composed up until now, erupted. Don't screw around, she shouted, her anger startling everyone in the room. especially Noah. Katie, always poised and humble, now unleashed her frustration. What do you mean you cheated because you were lonely? Do you have no self-control? And leaving Aydah with strangers, what were you thinking? Noah stammered in response. That's because Rachel told me her sister-in-law and brother-in-law are childless shut-ins who have nothing but time on their hands. They were a convenient option. I felt my frustration boil over. We may not have children, but we're freelancers working from home, not babysitters or handymen for your mess. Rachel, I told you this morning how troubling this was, and now we find out you deceived us into taking care of your mistress' child, passing her off as our niece. How could you? Noah, unfazed by the weight of his actions, shrugged. So what? Maybe I'll get blamed for cheating, but at least I taught a childless couple what it's like to have kids. That's a favor, right? The room went silent, except for a sharp intake of breath from Chris. His voice dropped, deep and furious. What did you just say? I turned to Rachel. My patience gone. Do you hear this? You're no better. All those snide remarks about us being childless. You knew we've been trying to have children. Do you know how infuriating it's been to put up with your comments? Rachel, I did it only because you were Chris' wife, but not anymore. I let out everything I'd been holding in. You've been incredibly rude to bringing a stranger's child to our house without asking, showing up in ridiculous makeup that doesn't match your age, and that perfume of yours is so overpowering it could knock someone out. Rachel shrank under the weight of my words, while Chris stood there, his expression dark, clearly ready to handle what came next. When I finally let out everything I'd been holding back, Rachel's face turned bright red. She clearly wanted to argue but must have realized she was in no position to fight back. Biting her lip, she stayed silent. After that, both Rachel and Noah received a thorough scolding from Chris and Katie. Unsurprisingly, both marriages ended in divorce. Rachel and Noah also had to pay substantial educational expenses for their children as part of the settlements. Chris, still furious, spread the word about Noah's infidelity to their mutual friends in Nebraska. The rumor quickly reached Noah's local hair salon, and the scandal became the talk of the town. With his reputation ruined, Noah was fired. Rachel, who had been a housewife since graduating college, struggled to find a job due to her lack of work experience. Her parents, disgusted by her actions, disowned her. She now scrapes by with whatever odd jobs she can find. Both Rachel and Noah lost their jobs, families, and reputations because of their infidelity, leaving them in a miserable state. As for me, something wonderful happened. Our fertility treatments worked, and I'm pregnant. Even more exciting, we're expecting twins. When John and I received the news, we couldn't help but cry tears of joy. Now, we're eagerly preparing for our baby's arrival. We've stayed close to Katie and Aydah, forming an unexpected but meaningful bond. Aydah and our niece, Arnes, get along wonderfully and often play together. They've even started talking to my growing belly, telling the twins, let's play together once you're born. It's absolutely heartwarming. Despite the pain of betrayal, Chris and Katie have resolved to raise their children as single parents. John and I are fully committed to helping them whenever they need it. The four of U.S. John, Chris, Katie, and I have promised to support each other in raising Aydah, Arnes, and our soon-to-be-born twins. Together, we formed a strong, supportive family bound not just by blood, but by love and shared experiences.